Let's talk about margin of error and confidence interval, really, and how they relate to each other. So the margin of error really talks about how close to the actual population is the recorded percentage, right? That's really what we're talking about. Because we can't ever be 100% accurate when we do a survey. So we're really trying to figure out how close are we. So the margin of error is the possible variation. So if we say 32% said that, margin of error is plus or minus 3%. We're close. We're going to be within 3% one way or the other. That's the idea of margin of error. So anytime you hear someone say, plus or minus, that's margin of error. The confidence interval is the range of values. So if we say, okay, 32% to stick with and then we said, plus or minus 3%, well, if I subtract 3% going left, 32 minus 3 is 29. If I add 3% to the right, 32 plus 3 is 35, we have now just created a confidence interval. That's this is the interval of expectation based off the data we have. Now, in our particular case, we are only dealing with 95% confidence intervals. So you're always going to take your sample percentage or sample item, and you're going to subtract the margin of error to go to the left, and you're going to add the margin of error to get the number on the right. And that there is your 95% confidence interval. So the confidence interval allows us to make statements about the entire population. So we can't survey everyone. So we will do a sample survey, right? So maybe we'll talk to 3,000 people. But then we have a plus or minus something, and that allows us to say, okay, we know that out of 3,000 people, this is what they said. If we extrapolate that to the entire population, we have this interval. So that's the idea of the interval, is to kind of say, okay, let's make this broader and bigger with the entire population. So let's look at this. The margin of error for the poll you see in this table is about being a good society member, and that margin of error is plus or minus 1.7 percentage points. So calculate the confidence interval for the percentage of those who believe voting is very important to being a good member of society using the reported margin of error. Now, very important is the dark part, so that's this first piece here, and that says 69%. So we're going to say 69% plus or minus 1.7%. Now, that means we're going to take 69% and we're going to subtract 1.7% to the left. We're going to add 1.7% to the right. So 69 minus 1.7 is 67.3%. And to the right, we add 1.7, we get 70.7%. And that right there is my 95% confidence interval. Now, the confidence interval is great, but if you don't know what that means, it's pointless. So we're going to write a sentence to show that meaning. When you're writing a sentence about a confidence interval, I like to start with, how confident are you? We are 95% confident. And we can say 95% confidence because, one, I think it says it in this problem somewhere in a different video, but also in this course that we're playing in, we only deal with 95% confidence intervals. If you get into a statistics course, you'll get into different confidence levels, but for our purpose, we're always 95% confident in this here quantitative reasoning course. So we're 95% confident that between 67.3% and 70.7% of U.S. adults, because that's who we talk to here, U.S. adults see voting as very important to being a good member of society. Now, I want to point out a few things in this sentence because there's really four main parts, 3 or 4. First, how confident are you? You always want to have how confident you are. 2, you need the confidence interval. Okay, so how confident are you? let me write this down. 1, how confident? That's the first one. 2, you need your confidence interval. That has to be in there. 3, who are we talking about? Who or what? Because depending on the problem. So in that case, it's the U.S. adults, right? So that's usually your population. And then 4, what are they doing? In this case, they're being a good member of society. So that's the 4th piece. So that's what you want to say. I am 95% confident that this is my confidence interval of the U.S. adults and they're being good members of society. So you want to kind of put all of those pieces together in order to create a meaningful sentence that shows information about your confidence interval.